Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show, take two. This will be the last of these Friday episodes, I'm afraid. It was kind of a special we put on to cover the federal election. When we started these, we didn't even quite know when it was going to be called. It's now behind us, and I'll give you guys a break. You'll just have to deal with me on Wednesdays from here on in. But it's been a fun road with keeping these extra shows, covering a few extra subjects, having a few extra guests. So we'll wrap things up, get ready for the summer. There's still plenty of politics to cover, but maybe we don't need to do it a couple of days a week, at least out of me. I'm going to have mayoral candidate Jeff Davison on in a little while for Calgary. Don't want to forget that it is municipal election year in Alberta. So yeah, I know you don't get a break from election campaigns. We got a bunch of by-elections. I'll talk a little bit about those later too. And this fall, yeah, every town, every city, you were looking for every reeve and mayor are all standing for re-election or trying to get elected for the first time. So Jeff Davison's one of the early ones out of the gate, and he was a former city councilor, so we'll set the tone there. And yeah, as I said in the cover, the election's over. Parliament's sitting again. I watched question period the other day, and I'm happy to report that absolutely nothing has changed. It's an utter waste of time. Mark Carney has learned the art of absolutely answering nothing, and you might as well just put on reruns of Gilligan's Island or something for what it's worth. You're not going to get anything out of the House of Commons. But I'll pick out and interpret what I can from what those clowns say in there. But, all this time, all this closed parliament running through an election, then just get back in and you just see the same faces. One different one who doesn't stammer quite as much as the former prime minister, and his hair isn't quite as nice, but his answers are pretty much just as vacuous. All right, let's get on to somebody who gives straight answers and straight talk. That's our news editor, Dave Naylor, and see what else is going on here. Hey, Dave.
For one, I'm sorry you're not going to be on Friday anymore.
Well, I mean, it's a mixed thing, It was good to be able to get that extra bit of coverage throughout the end of the week, but at the same time, it's let people take a bit of a breather for the summer. Maybe in fall we'll look at expanding again or something.
Yeah, well, no breathers for the news, though, is there? Right in the G7,
oh, you don't get to escape, yeah.
And then the civic elections. Good fun stuff. And summer seems to have finally arrived. I was thinking of you this week when I saw. I turned on my Alexa and I asked it in the morning what the weather is, and it started off, there's a warning, a heat warning out. It's going to be 25 today.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, not 25. And then, of course, all the weather maps had it in bright red, raging red.
And it's everywhere now. Everything's an emergency. I saw that a couple of weeks ago when it was just forecasted for some steady rain. Rainfall warning. Well, what, are we going to have a flood or is it lightning? No, it's just going to rain. But it's a rainfall warning. Well, thanks.
You know what? Unless it's going to hail, I don't really care about rain, right?
Yeah. Well, and they call 25 a heat dome now and all that crap. Like, guys, we're a little past 30. We hit those temperatures back in our youthful days.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think the kids today are scared by all that red?
They should be, if that's all you've heard. I mean, it sounds pretty terrifying, doesn't it?
It does. Very, very terrifying. So, anyway, it's not a bad news morning for a Friday. Our site right now, we're obviously leading off with your show, but right underneath it, we've got an Abbotsford teacher who was fired last year for saying that the Kamloops graves were a hoax. Kind of like you. Yeah. So he gets fired from his job. So he's now written a book about his situation. Jim McMurtry, I think his name is.
Yeah.
So he's doing a book launch this afternoon out in front of the school.
Oh,
and the school has sent him a nasty letter this morning saying you don't want to do that. And, Access to School Act and all that sort of stuff. But he's vowing to go ahead. So we got the early story up there and we'll be following that through the day, but it sounds like it could be up for a good ruckus.
Yeah, well, maybe that'll be the first grave actually goes into that school. It'll be Jim's.
Oh, it'll be Jim's. You remember the big AHS procurement scandal? I use the word scandal in quotation marks. They brought in an out-of-town judge to go through the whole thing, and he was to have a final report done June 30th. And they've now pushed that back to October, a long way back. So, of course, the eyebrow gets raised, and the government just says it's the thousands and thousands of pages and numerous witnesses that the judge has to interview. So he just couldn't get it done in time by the end of next month. So let's push it back another 4 months.
This worries me. And I'm optimistic about our provincial government. I want them to do well, considering the alternative is ninchy. But what it sounds a lot, the way they're playing it is kind of like the Trudeau government did with the foreign interference scandal. If we just push off enough little inquiries and investigations and drag our heels and flood it with paperwork and talk around it, they just kind of hope the public loses interest.
Yeah, and obviously the obvious thing to think about when it's moved back like that is, oh, they must have something to hide. They may not, but that's what it
doesn't
appears
help.
like.
I mean, if they're talking, saying we got nothing to hide, that means, well, let's rush it and rip off that Band-Aid and get it cleared so we can get on with our business.
Yeah. So apparently, unbeknownst to me, there's now going to be a Friday question period. Normally, they only held it on Wednesdays, and Fridays all the MPs got out of town to get back to their ridings. But it looks like they're going to be holding one on Friday morning. And they had one today, and the Tories are outraged, as you would expect, that the Carney Liberals are going ahead with $500 billion worth of spending and not bringing in a budget. The Tories say that's unacceptable, and I kind of agree with them.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of friggin' money. I mean, this is the banker. This is the economic expert. This is the messiah. He's going to save Canada from economic doom, but he's incapable of a budget.
Yeah,
we're going a budget update. I mean, give us something, you guys.
Yeah, it's incredible. We did get some good economic news this morning. The GDP for the first quarter was up 2.2%. It's thought that a lot of people did some spending to get ahead of the tariffs, and now the trouble's coming. And I think it was the TD Bank this morning says we'll be soon in a recession and could lose 100,000 jobs. So happy days are here again. We've got our columnist Anthony Barber is taking a look at why Carney seems to be more Eurocentric than Trudeau. He wants Canada to move more towards Europe. And Barber argues that Europe's on its path of destruction with out of control immigration and whatnot there. So it's got a good column there. We got wildfire smoke advisories across 6 provinces. It's bad. It's bad up in all across the prairies are in heat and just hundreds and hundreds of out of control wildfires. So fortunately, the smoke hasn't reached Calgary yet.
Yeah, I got to admit, not so much to play in this, a lot of discussion and talk about it and everything, but something that seems to have changed this last 10, 15 years, we have had a lot more fires, or they've been burning with more intensity. I mean, there's perhaps some reasonable, statements like we haven't been allowing them to burn, thus there eventually happens, they get more intense and things like that. Maybe it is some global warming happening, whether or not humans cause it. I mean, it's a whole separate rabbit hole, but I remember lots of hot days as a kid, but I don't remember as many smoky days as we've seen this last 10 years.
No, it's usually pretty bad in Calgary too. Yeah. And, you saw like with Jasper, the forests are get naturally laden down with fire materials, all the dead branches and stuff like that. So when they do go, it's, they go.
I've talked about that. It's one of my, little YouTube channel videos I did years ago. This was before I even worked at the Standard, but I got so frustrated because lucky me, David Swan lives up in Prentice where I am. And he opposes everything. He's an environmental nut. And there's some logging that was going to happen on the trunk road down south of us. No, he was getting people together on why we must not do it. So I went out and I shot video and I showed, for one, here's where the logging has been done already. This is not a national park, guys. They replant it. It might look a little ugly, but here's the spots where they haven't logged. And it's just tangled and thick with dead growth. Say that if we don't log it, it's going to burn. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And
it's all Mother Nature's plan, isn't it?
Yeah, she's good at what she does.
She is. And our top story of the day right now is Danielle Smith last night at the Leaders Calgary dinner was asked when she's going to draw the line with Ottawa in the sand. And she said Sunday. On Sunday, Mark Carney is flying into Calgary to meet with with energy company leaders. So I guess on Monday afternoon or evening or whenever he deems to speak to the media, we should know what he thinks about energy and oil and gas and pipelines.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be just as clear as he was in question period.
Yes, hopefully not. And Smith is riding a wave of good news this week. A big CBC Janet Brown poll was out showing she's kicking Nenshi's butt. 52% approval rating. Nenshi, I think 38. So yeah, she's She seems to be on cruise control right now, doing well.
Well, yeah, good for her. I mean, and part of it too is I don't know if they. I mean, and again, I like the ACP for the most part, but I don't know if they're doing all that well. It's just that Nenchi's just not inspiring yet.
No. Well, I guess we'll see when he gets in. Well, if he gets in on the by-election.
Be tough not to in Strathcona. But...
Yeah, probably one of the most NDP ridings around. But yeah, in fair dues, it's a lot more. You get a lot more visibility in question period.
True enough. We'll see if that nasally voice in question period is going to endear them to Albertans or turn them the other way.
Yes, you know what you and I would think. So
yeah. Well, that's why I'm an opinion guy, anyways.
Yeah, and I'm interested in your guest, Jeff Davison, today. It's we were talking just before the show. I worry deeply that Gondek's going to get back in.
It's a real concern. We're going to end up with a dozen mayoral candidates, all with different strengths, and the potential Gondek winning with 20-25% just because she's the incumbent cornering that. We'll see. But what are you supposed to do? Tell people not to run? I mean,
yes. Well, hopefully some of them get together and figure it out. Look, okay, maybe I'll drop out and you go ahead. But you get several right-wing candidates, and the left-wing always wins. Could do the vote splitting.
Yeah, well. It's early in the game. We'll see. I'll ask, Mr. Davison how he's looking to stand out and try and consolidate then as part of his campaign, of course. I'm certain his intent isn't to put Gondek back. So.
No, that's enough to give one sleepless nights all the way through October.
Oh, yeah, another 4 years of her. Oof. Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I'll let you get back to the newsroom to get stuff up for the weekend and take advantage of that weather.
Exactly. Get out of here early today. Because Derek's not in.
Yeah, and he's never watching.
He's never watching, so he won't know.
Right. All right. Thanks, Dave.
You bet.
So, yeah, there's our news editor, Dave Naylor. And yes, lots going on, lots going up and being written about. And the reason we're doing it, the reason we can, the reason I keep nagging you, it's how we pay the bills, guys. Subscriptions. That's the modern media way. Is this way we aren't beholden to the government, so we can report on them critically, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal. Those of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, westernstandard.news/subscription. It's $10 a month, $100 for a year. Not so much, guys. And you get past the paywall, and it helps support us and keep us rolling on all these things. Let's have a look through some of the comments. It's nice of Freddie Freeloader just reminding folks on our behalf, thank you, whoever you are, to make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe and all that sort of stuff and share it. And yes, those parts are free. I mean, we appreciate the subscriptions, but also just help spread it around so we can keep getting these shows out there. Ruckin, yes. Hey, Cory, could you have someone from the CTPF on your show to discuss current taxation as compared to what an independent Alberta could look like? I can. Okay, taxpayers, they usually go by CTF, Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Yeah, I'll probably have Franco Terrazano or somebody on. I mean, I have them on quite regularly, once every couple of months or month or two. And that's one of the issues going on. They don't kind of take sides. They're, a national organization but I'm certain he could answer some of those questions anyways. Absolutely. Unaffordable housing we got and other stuff going on. Let's see. Oh, and somebody's saying he's going to inform Daryl that we both skipped out early. Well, that's all right. Daryl doesn't care whoever he is. All right. So, yeah, let's see what else we've got going on. Carney, the man's got to move. So Danielle Smith has drawn the line in the sand, as Dave said, he pointed out. And she said by Sunday, dude, you got to get on something solid. No more wishy-washy crap. No more, I support pipelines, sort of, kind of, maybe. And it's played out well for Premier Smith. I mean, she's actually, as I was talking with Dave too, they want to distract from this Alberta Health Services procurement mess that's going on, whatever the heck is going on there. So, hey, what better way than to get into a nice big scrap with Ottawa? And Ottawa's providing all of the reasons for it. Joe Mills pointing out Carney will always put Brookfield's interests ahead of Canadians. It's a real issue with Carney. With Brookfield, he was tied in, and it's a diverse company, whether it's honest or not honest, they've got their fingers in everything. So while, yes, he's distanced himself from the management of that now, it's hard not to read a possible conflict of interest in pretty much anything he does. There's part of the problem when you bring in a prime minister or a premier or anybody really who has a long business history. And some of their actions might seem a lot more like they're self-serving rather than serving the country. Hardly anything new for political leaders, though, is it? So he's coming out. He's going to be out in Saskatoon on, I believe it's July 2nd or 3rd, and that's a First Minister's Conference. So all of the premiers are going to be in one spot with the Prime Minister. And he's got a lot to try and do. Part of it was he was saying he's going to get rid of interprovincial trade barriers. Well, you better start talking to them. Are you going to show leadership? Are you going to convince them? Are you going to allow provinces to keep fighting with each other and blocking trade? There's some of the irony. You talk about this federation. We're all supposed to be better off all together in this big umbrella of Canada. Beautiful. But you allow provinces to shut off products and trade from each other, whether it's pipelines or dairy products or wine or beer. Then we're not really a federation. See, this is the stuff that helps feed the independence movement. When we can point out to people, can it be any worse? I mean, we can negotiate new deals as an independent province because we're not getting good deals in the current one. Under our constitution, provinces aren't supposed to be able to hinder trade between each other. That's the point of a federation. And if the federal government doesn't at least fulfill that role as kind of the central arbitrator on that sort of thing, again, it gets people asking, well, what's the point? I don't know. I don't see the point, but we know where I stand with things. So, I mean, also just a plug for something else on in Saskatchewan as well, just by coincidence, on Monday, the 2nd, I'm going to be in Regina. There's a emergency rally being put on by Rebel Media, actually, and I'll be one of the speakers at that event that evening. So you can check that out if you're interested, because independence movement in Saskatchewan is as strong or support for it as in Alberta. And it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to actually talking to some people there, listening to some people there. The last thing they need is, necessarily another person from out of province telling them how they should govern their affairs. I don't think that's the point of what this event is. We want to find out exactly what their concerns are, which are very similar to Alberta's concerns, of course, but I'm certain there's going to be some differences as well. They don't quite have the amount of organization on the ground yet. Nadine Ness has been working really hard out there. And I suspect it'll form as that sentiment goes. And Scott Moe has been battling Ottawa quite valiantly as a premier as well, and probably not going to get anywhere. How many times are we got to get the wool pulled over our eyes? Well, not so much us. Well, some of us in the West even, voted Liberal. That's why I gave this sour note to start off when the House of Commons sitting yet again, and nothing changed. This was supposed to be the big seminal election. This was the one. We're getting away from 10 years of Trudeau's incompetent, vacuous leadership, his economy crushing management, his inept DEI cabinet. And Carney painted himself as the man who was going to do all of those things. And he hasn't done a damn one of them. He sounds just like Trudeau. So we're back into it. As Dave said, possibly even worse. Trudeau released a budget. $500 billion, folks, of spending they've decided to put out. No budget. We are going to be up the creek, you guys. As Dave was pointing out, TD Bank is saying we're running into a recession. We could be losing 100,000 jobs soon. Most of those job losses are going to end up coming out of central Canada. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to milk the West some more. They always do. That's the way it works. And then independent sentiment is only going to rise. We're getting tired of bailing out Canada because of the economic damage caused by the governments that central Canada keeps insisting on electing. How much more can we take? How much more can we afford? And this is speaking of Canada, Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Franco put this out. The federal bureaucracy. It's expanded to 98,986 employees in the last decade. And that's just the expansion. So now there's like 360,000 civil servants in Canada, just federally. What the hell are they doing? How many how many months does it take to renew a bloody passport? How long does it take to manage to immigrate into this country? They're incompetent. They're terrible. They're bloated. They're expensive. And they're getting worse, and we're paying for it. Where are they all? Central Canada. This is how they artificially shore up the economy. This is how they try to make it look like we are functional. They borrow money, they suck money out of the productive provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then they hire thousands of people to buy electoral love in Quebec and Ontario. But we can't sustain this much longer. I mean, the average full-time federal employee, here's some of the numbers from Franco as well, $125,300 a year. Yeah. You know, we 360,000 of them, and they're averaging 125,000 a year. Not bad work if you can get it, eh? And I've seen those things, ads for civil service jobs, provincially, federal, or municipally, and that too. And they talk about now an average work week is 35 hours. And of course, these guys get 4 weeks of vacation. They get a plethora of sick days. They're doing 10% of the work and making twice as much as you do. How does that feel? You know? How much would we lose as individuals cutting those clowns by half? Really, seriously. You know, one of the, I've been very critical of Trump, and I'll remain so. But and things have to be done with a degree of planning and nuance. But I tell you what, the Doge idea was a smart one. They got the same problem in the States. These bloated government institutions that do nothing but bleed. They're parasitic. They slow the economy. They harm the productive. And they keep us from managing to get anything accomplished. And you've got to get in there with some courage and cut them heavily. Now, cutting them blindly can lead to some problems. But, you know, a corporation can manage to do it with proper care and diligence. It's time it happened in Canada, but Carney's not going to do it. So look at this wall we're moving towards, guys. And oh, they're all patting themselves in the back. They're crowing. Look at that. The first quarter of 2025, the GDP grew by 2.2% in Canada. Great. But as Dave pointed out, much of that is due because with the tariffs coming and going and everything else, as things were coming, a lot of businesses said, let's get all our spending done right now. Let's buy, let's sit on things so we don't have to pay the tariffs on these that are going to be coming later. It was a bit of a short-term rush, but that's not going to last much longer. That's just a hiccup. And the other thing is, well, legacy media, to, you know, their federal masters, loves to pump up anything that looks positive over the federal government. They always overlook that GDP per capita thing. And that's the one I harp on about because it's so important. Gross domestic product per capita. That's the amount of economic activity per person in the country. And Canada is swirling the toilet. We are down and dropping and continuing to. A large part of it. All of these things that Carney keeps talking about, saying he's going to do, but he won't do. We're sitting on some of the largest deposits of natural resources in the world, but Mark Carney doesn't have the balls to actually let us develop them further. We have a large consumer market within our own country, but Carney won't have the courage to rip down the trade barriers from province to province to increase that sort of thing happening here. And as I said with the House of Commons, if you watched that question period the other day, and oh boy, I do recommend if anybody's never watched it, they should watch it, but also just to see how pointless it really is to expect much of those people in there. Carney was questioned on the tariffs because he secretly dropped a lot of the Canadian counter tariffs towards the end of the election. He actually cut them, didn't tell anybody about it, which is fine. Counter tariffs are stupid. It's your way of saying, I'll punch myself in the balls harder and you punch yourself in the balls and let's just do it until somebody hurts enough that they stop. Well, we stopped, so good for you. But at the same time, Carney's in the House of Commons claiming that the tariffs are going to raise $20 billion to help cover all his spending promises. Well, wait a minute. You got rid of the tariffs. And he was questioned about that in the House of Commons at question period. And all he did was give out another stock line saying these are the best tariffs. They're going to bring the United States to their knees and we are paying all our bills with their tariffs. In fact, he sounded a lot like Trump. He just ignored the reality of something that was, and just completely lied in response to it. So what's the point of question period if they're just going to turn to you and lie? They're not even going to acknowledge the question you threw at him. You dropped the tariffs, Mr. Carney. Good. But what are you going to do now since you budgeted for the revenue that was supposed to come from them? And what he did was just pretended he didn't drop them. Here's Pexarity? Different names you guys give in the company. The question period thing is such BS. The Liberals aren't obligated to answer any questions. They just say something is considered an answer. Why bother to ask? I know It's really devolved into theater. And hey, it's not just the Liberals guilty of it. That's what gets frustrating with our system in general, right? Conservatives are just as bad at stonewalling when they get in power too, and they respond often with mockery rather than an answer. And it just leaves people dejected. But the problem is when we get too dejected and people disconnect from the system and they stop taking part, then the politicians really get away with everything. So I don't think watching Question Period every day helps. But at the same time, we've got to keep an eye on things. Northern Gal pointing out in the comments saying, better to watch committees. Question Period's a waste of time. And that's true. And committee work is where the nuts and bolts of our government really happen. And I'll throw a plug to Blacklock's Reporter. They're the media outlet, where we get a lot of our stories from and through, because they really dig into committee notes and things like that. When policy is really actually being formulated and they're doing amendments and they're determining things or they're determining government actions, most of that happens in committee, not in the House of Commons. And the committees can be boring as all get out. That's part of the problem. But if you really want to see where something's going and who's controlling it, the committees are where the real action kind of happens. And a lot of that is available online. It's streaming if you go to the House of Commons, if you got time on your hands. But you get to see a little bit of what's happening. But yeah, Premier Smith, she's kind of sitting happy in some ways. She had that meeting, 2,000 people for a leaders' dinner in Calgary. And I don't know what it costs, $400 or $500 a plate or so. Pretty healthy fundraiser. And is apparently the largest one ever held in Alberta. And playing a lot to, I guess, to our regional division. David Bexty is he's a new member of Parliament for Alberta. There's one of the things you get out of there, I guess. It wasn't a question period, but it was his main speech to the House of Commons. And he said Westerners would like to rip the place down and rebuild Canada. These are federal politicians talking. This is interesting. He said Alberta separatism is no longer a fringe idea. And he won his riding with 79%, by the way. He said, I come to the House with one of the strongest mandates in the nation. He said, I earned it by promising to rip this place down to the studs and start rebuilding the country we can recognize again. He was a farmer and oil exec. He said he heard the separatism more doors than he can count. And he said, Alberta staying in Confederation is not up to me. It's not up to the Liberals. It's up to the people of Alberta. And the Albertans know they have options. This discussion, the dismissiveness, the battle against the independence movement has been interesting to watch. And they're trying to pretend it isn't there. Guys, the lowest polls have it near 30%. I can't, with listening to legacy media, I torture myself listening to their shows and things like that. And they talk about, it's only 30%. It's nothing to worry about. Guys, at its lowest, 1 in 3 people in this province and in Saskatchewan want the hell out of the Federation. That is not something you dismiss. That is a groundswell. That is an embarrassment. That is a sign of a broken country. Drew Mitchell, a commenter, saying, yeah, tell me again, Canada isn't broken. Alberta independence is the only way. Canada is broken. It's not working right. It's a vortex. It sucks all resources into the center and the power into the center. And it leads to more frustration. And it's going to lead to the dissolution of this country eventually. It's just a matter of how. But pretending it's not significant at 30%, well, again, as an independent supporter, I said, great, carry on, keep doing it. But it's not going to win. Here's again with Carney and the lack of courage. And the Bloc Québécois, here's some of they stand up for themselves. And they're willing to basically say Quebec first. They don't care about anybody else. Okay. You don't have to like them, but they're correct in doing what they do. And they put a dairy bill forward to entrench further supply management, dairy supply management, which is that rip-off system that forces farmers to pour billions of liters of milk down the drain over the years. Yeah, literally. And it raises the prices artificially on dairy products. Canadians are paying billions and billions more for food over time because dairy and poultry are artificially kept up by cartels and limited licenses for that. It's a sick Soviet-style policy is what it is. It's embarrassing. Australia and New Zealand used to have crappy supply management policies like that. They got rid of them. All of those parasitic farmers who depended on price fixing to get by said the world's going to end. The world's going to end. Guess what? Their industries got stronger. But in Canada, we're entrenching it. Why are we entrenching it, though? Well, guess what? They're in Quebec. And that's part of why the Bloc is pushing for this. But Carney said he endorsed the bill. He endorsed the bill. Now, Carney said a couple of things before. Well, he's always been too scared, and the Conservatives are too scared to attack supply management too, by the way. Both federal parties are too cowardly to take it on. But he said he's going to get rid of interprovincial trade barriers. Well, that's a huge one. It's a huge one because the federal supply management system forces all these different little provincial cartels to set up across the country and then bans the export of dairy goods between the provinces. It's the exact definition of interprovincial trade barriers. And he won't do anything about it. So, Northern Gal saying, the Bloc said the other day that they don't want those dirty pipelines, perhaps stop the dirty transfer payments. See, that's the frustrating truth of it. I was on X, Stephen Meganetic, I'm pronouncing his name wrong, going on about you want it both ways, because I was saying, if we stop pouring this equalization into Quebec, maybe they would develop their own gas fields. He was pointing out it's provincial jurisdiction on the oil and gas. Quebec can choose whether or not to develop their gas fields. That's absolutely true. But they shouldn't be able to make their choice based on parasitically sucking the money out of our wallets so that they can afford not to develop the gas in their own bloody province. It's a welfare bum sitting on top of a pile of gold that refuses to spend it, and you're forced to keep giving them money. It's got to stop. It's ridiculous that we're giving equalization to Quebec. It really is. Yet here we are. Joe Mills saying Quebec has to realize and appreciate where their energy comes from. Yeah, they don't, because we subsidize them. We get to do all the work. They get to take all the money. Fantastic deal, isn't it? We need more politicians to speak up like Mr. Bexty and sound like the Bloc politicians. Say, you know what? I don't give a shit about what the rest of the country wants anymore. I'm here to represent Alberta. I'm here to represent my constituents. I got my mandate from them. It's going to be hard on Poilievre because he's got to try and campaign to the whole country. But hey, you wanted the big job, Pierre. That's what you're going to have to deal with. So, we're going to change that. And the supply management screws us on foreign trade deals with the United States. It screwed us on foreign trade deals with Europe, Great Britain, because we, again, artificially protect our dairy market, and we've lost out on big, big trade agreements because of it. Why? Quebec. Every time it comes down to Quebec. So if you're expecting anything to change, guys, don't hold your breath on it. Getting on to a few of those things. So, I mean, there's a bunch of by-elections in Alberta. Practically none of them are interesting in a sense. Pierre Poilievre is going to run again, as we know, in the federal one in Alberta up north. They won by 80% the last time. He's going to win it again. That's a done deal. Naheed Nenshi is running in Edmonton, Strathcona. Again, Notley won that with, I think, in the high 70s% with the NDP. They're going to win that easily enough. Edmonton Ellerslie is up. Same thing, 60-some%, I believe, for the NDP. The NDP will take that too. The only one that's kind of interesting is Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. So Alberta's speaker, Nathan Cooper, left that seat, and that was another conservative one with over 80% support provincially. And he is going to be going down to working in Washington. So let's open it up. Now, this is a by-election. It's been called. Now, that constituency, Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills, is the most independence-minded constituency in the West. They actually elected Gord Kessler many years ago as a Western Canada Concept MLA. It didn't last too long, but I mean, nowhere else did they even elect one. And so if there's going to be a spot that independence movement kind of makes a blip, it'll be in that. But I don't know if it's going to be good for the independence movement. And I'll explain a little further in a moment here. So by-elections are interesting because they usually got really low turnout, especially this one that's going to be running through June. I mean, people are distracted and so on. The turnout is going to probably be very low. Also, people often will use a by-election to send a message. They're not too worried about it, right? No matter what you vote on in a by-election, it's not going to change the government. You're not going to accidentally put the NDP in or something like that. So it's like, yeah, you know what? I'll throw one at this kind of protest candidate. The problem is, the ones lining themselves up as the protest candidate are the ill-named Republican Party of Alberta. Somebody's poured a whole load of money into those guys Because I tell you, I've been doing speaking events all over the province, and I'm really hard pressed to find anybody who actually likes them. But they seem to have a bottomless pot of money, so they're showing up and making a lot of noise. Now, with a lot of votes happening in Olds Didsbury Three Hills, Cam Davies, who got himself acclaimed as a leader, shocker, acclaimed as the candidate, shocker, he's going to be running in Olds Didsbury Three Hills. Now, for starters, just the name of it, Republican Party. Why? Why were you dividing an already divided movement? Because not every independence-minded person in the West wants to be tied or associated with an American government or party. And just what are you pushing for in there? See, I'm seeing some of the commenters, Tyler Volstad, Cam Davies is a snake. Ryan B., a vote for Davies is a vote for the NDP. This is the messaging I'm getting about him all over the place. But they aren't going away. They're well-funded and they're running in this election. So we lose either way as independent supporters. Let's say he comes in and does really well and gets 30% support there. 30% support for an independence candidate in Alberta would be the largest by a long shot. He still wouldn't win, but it'd be the largest we've seen since the 80s. You think that's good for independence, right? Not exactly. Because, for one, it's the strongest independence-minded constituency in all of Alberta. It should be higher than that. And I doubt it will be because people just don't trust that party. But it will still give them a degree of credibility, and the bloody party won't go away, which is going to turn into a real problem. I'll explain a little further as we go. If they come in really crappy at 5 or 10%, again, the opponents of independence are going to say, look at that. An independence party couldn't even crack 10% in the strongest independence constituency in all of Alberta. The movement's obviously nothing. We lose either way. The absolute worst thing is he gets himself a seat. Because then you've got him in there again established, but again, he's not endearing himself to people. We're seeing that already. He's been going all over the place. So he'd be in there, though, and he'd have a voice, and they would pull maybe 10% support when we get to a general election. You know what 10% in a general election is in Alberta? It's the tipping point to make Naheed Nenshi the premier of the province. That's what'll turn Alberta NDP. For what? For what? What are we gaining out of this Republican Party? Ryan B., a commenter, just said it exactly right. Smith has been exceptional as she sets the table for a referendum. We can't lose her. We don't need any more action on the independence front from the provincial government. She's given us all we need. She's given us the mechanism. She's given us the ability to hold the vote and do it. So let's get on with that. Don't get messing around with political parties. We got 5 independence parties out there, 5 of them. And what is it going to do? Ammo 6C9M say, why are you attacking people who are on board with independence? Because they're screwing the movement. That's why. I'm not here to support the people. I'm here to support the movement. And when we've got one group that is out there souring people on it all over the place, it's not helping. When it's splitting it, when it's dividing it, when it's setting it back. We don't need more than the referendum ability right now. Premier Smith has a whole heck of a lot of things she has to do. And, went towards a pension plan, RCMP, balancing the Alberta budget. I've been on her case. She bloody well should by now. Many, many things. As far as independence goes, now it's in our lap. We've got the ability for a referendum. And, okay, Ammo 6C9CM. So here's a commenter. I like his version versus Smith's A Sovereign Alberta within a dysfunctional Canada. Okay, do you like his version of Premier Nenshi never letting us have a referendum again? And we're not going to get a referendum for trying to win provincial seats. The referendum is a standalone effort. Don't spend $1 million trying to win seats when you've already got the referendum ability. Don't get the volunteers and tire them out chasing around provincial seats, splitting the vote, putting the NDP in when we've got the referendum ability. Put that energy into the referendum because it's the one and only mechanism we've got. Everything else is pissing in the wind. But he has the right to run. The party has the right to go. We'll see what happens with it. That's up to those voters in Olds Didsbury Three Hills. I hate to say, but yes, I just don't feel terribly optimistic about either outcome in that. In the meantime, I hope the other groups and folks stay centered and focused on working towards a referendum instead of messing around with these side things. Here's part of what has been good, anyways, is the question has really been coming up more than ever, and maybe waking up a few people in Canada in government in general. And this was in the Senate with some of the discussions. Yeah, our sleepy Senate, and there was discussions of whether the Clarity Act applies to all provinces, and the senator had to admit that it does. And we typically won't have those sorts of conversations going on in that house. And maybe it would just make some more people reevaluate their policies. As I said, if you're opposed to Alberta independence, and you know what, the majority of people are still at this point, and particularly in central Canada, in the federal government, in the Senate, well, stop insulting the movement, stop inflaming the movement, and really start to look at what's causing it. If you guys really want to stop it, it's in your hands now. No more platitudes, no more ragging the puck. Get the corridor going so we can get our resources to market. Really actually bring down those trade barriers that we have between the provinces. It's up to them now. A growing number of Albertans have been, they've had enough. They're tired out, and they're going to pursue other alternatives. It's now in your court. Amos C9 saying Smith has controlled federal opposition. Okay, no, sorry. She's not. Whatever you might think of Premier Smith, don't start the conspiracy crap. It's not going to get anywhere. She's not part of a controlled federal opposition. She was not elected as an independent supporter. That wasn't her platform. It would be morally incorrect for her to jump on that. As I said, she gave the mechanism. It's up to voters. For her to turn around now and take that on again, that's another way of saying, remember, the highest we're seeing polled still is or the reality is we're looking 30, top 40%, maybe. If she jumps on independence and splits her own vote, again, you're going to look at Premier Nenshi. It's not her job to do that. She gave you the mechanism for a referendum. If you want independence, follow that mechanism. It's going to be the way to do it. But let's see here. Yeah, there's Troy saying, okay, my concern with the referendum, if we had a majority in favor, referendum about equalization payments a few years ago and nothing came about. Yeah, that's true. It was just a big province-wide poll. That's all it really was. It just reaffirmed what we already knew. Most Albertans don't like equalization. Okay, and then nothing became of it. The difference with a referendum that is held correctly under the Clarity Act with a clear question on independence is that it would trigger the Clarity Act. And suddenly, if there was a win, and we're a long ways from that, guys, we're a ways from it. We've got a good chunk of people to win over if you really think it's going to happen. But if it did happen, then the rest of the country is obligated to negotiate the independence of that province after that. Now, that could still take years, and there's a whole lot of question marks. But that's a big difference between that sort of referendum and the one on equalization we saw a little while ago. So either way, let's twist things back. I want to get back to my guest coming pretty soon here. And as I said, all of Alberta is going into a municipal race soon. This is an area that we are as guilty as Albertans as anybody else is. We don't pay enough attention to our civic politics. They're the closest ones to us. They impact us very directly. And this is the year, guys. You get a chance every 4 years. In my area, I'll be voting for a local councillor, and we'll get a reeve. And in Calgary, there's going to be a mayoral race. And it's going to be a hotly contested one. There's no doubt about that. Calgary is a big city, and not everybody's endeared to the current mayor. So Jeff Davison is coming on. He's running again. He's a former councillor with Calgary City Council. He ran in the last mayoral election, and he's been one of the early ones out of the gate, putting his hat into the ring for the race this time around. So he's going to join us. Hey there, Jeff. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good. I appreciate you coming on. As I was kind of saying to people, it's going to be a hotly contested race and a bit of a long grind. I know you're in for it now for a long summer of working and pancake flipping. But we've got to set the stage, I guess. Where I want to begin, we've already got a number of people, people of some profile putting their names in to run in this race. One of your challenges is going to be distinguishing yourself from that pack. So what makes you different?
I think it's three things: leadership, experience, and vision. I think those are the three things that are missing from this city council. And I think it's a serious consideration as to why people don't have trust in council right now. And it's time to reset that. I think we've got to get back to basics. We've got to start thinking about how we get our budgets in line. And what we're seeing from this city council just isn't getting us there. So I look at, we're going to have major issues in this city around infrastructure. We're seeing significant issues around public safety. Affordability is a big concern. None of these things are being addressed. And so, for myself, I look at it from the perspective of, well, I've got the experience of being a city councilor. I understand budgeting and how the city should be working. I have, spent 25 years in energy and technology in the film industry and now healthcare. Leadership is a big piece of what we need at City Hall. And then it really comes down to vision. Where are we taking the city? Because once we get the budget restored, once we get things reset, where are we going to be in 10 years? And I think I'm the only person that's been out there articulating those three things are the big sort of items that people are looking for.
Great. So, with that leadership aspect, there's a couple of things. Just to remind everybody, a mayor only has one vote among a council, but it's still a very significant role within them in two senses. One, I guess we'll start with that. We've had a lot of difficulty and dysfunction among council members with each other. It's often kind of the mayor's role as the chair to try and maintain order in that. You were enjoying some of that during your term as a councillor with Mayor Nenshi, and Mayor Gondek's had her challenges with that. What sort of strategy would you be bringing in to hopefully try and keep the council moving in a productive way?
I think it's a strategy I've had all my life in a 25-year career, right? In healthcare, I don't have a party to work with me at the table. In film, you don't always have willing partners that want to go in a direction. It's about finding the common ground, bringing people into the project and saying, folks, we got to line up here. This is what people are asking us to do, and getting things done, right? That is what leadership's all about. It's about how do you position the merit of any project that we're trying to bring together? How do you bring people together on it? And then how do you execute it together so that everybody gets a piece of the win? And I think, largely in part why we're seeing such a fracture on city council right now is because there is no leadership there. Everybody's in for themselves, and that doesn't position a good outcome for Calgarians first.
So another aspect that's been problematic for quite some years is the relationship between city councils and the provincial government. And to be honest, I'm pretty supportive of Premier Smith quite often, but they really do seem to have a thing with getting intrusive into municipal turf quite a bit. And I don't like jurisdictional overreach from the federal government into the provincial, and I don't like it provincial into the municipal, but it takes quite some diplomacy, I guess. You got to maintain a close relationship with the provincial government. What would you like to see changed in the relationship between the cities and the province?
Well, again, I think this is a failure of leadership on the city council. I agree. We can't always pick and choose who we want our provincial partner to be. At the end of the day, though, we have to make a relationship work and put Calgarians first. And that's what we're going to fight for. It's no different than our premier is fighting for Alberta first right now. I absolutely believe that. But that's what we're going to do for Calgarians as well, and ensure that under these provincial budgets that Calgarians get their fair share. But it all comes down to relationship, right? I think that's where you have to be able to bring people into the projects together. You look at sort of the failure of Green Line, how long that's taken to get, we don't even have track laid, and we've been talking about this thing for 10 years. At some point, your partners, whether that's in the private sector or in the public sphere here, at some point, your partners are going to get frustrated if you're not bringing them along and keeping them informed on the project. And so our job is to work with our provincial counterparts to say, look, and let's take public safety as a big one, right? When you think about the crime that's happening downtown, a lot of that is due to the opioid crisis, right? My job as the mayor is not to deal or wade into healthcare, right? That's a provincial problem. But we're going to need those provincial partners at the table with us if we're going to solve the problem of crime downtown, because quite frankly, the crime is being influenced by, the addiction. And to deal with addiction, that often comes with mental health issues. We need the province to work with us on the mental health and addiction side and support us on the policing side so that we can actually clean up the streets and make Calgary a safer place for everybody.
Well, absolutely. And there's been a push for the Green Line in transit. And to be honest, when we see a weekly story of somebody being assaulted or intimidated on Calgary Transit,
Mhm.
Ridership, it just doesn't bring people into it. So, I mean, why would you want to build a whole new line when we're having trouble getting people onto the existing line? I mean, there's lots of people who use it, but they use it almost grudgingly.
Yeah.
What about improvements for the existing transit system?
I think that's actually, you've hit the nail on the head there. That's key to what we have here, right? If you want ridership to go up, you have to make it safe. I mean, personally, right now, I've got a 16-year-old daughter who I refuse to let take the C train because I don't feel like it's a safe place for her to be. We're seeing crime at the stations, and it's all over the map now. You're seeing people assaulted on the trains. You're seeing openly people with addictions doing drugs on the trains. These things have to be addressed. I think one of the biggest failures on transit of the city council is, again, the failure to connect the dots, right? People will not take transit if they don't feel safe. Make it safe and you increase your ridership numbers. When you increase your ridership numbers, okay, well, now we can look at further investments in transit. But it comes back to that core ability that if you fail to make it safe for people, who's taking this thing? You know, and now unfortunately we're seeing many incidences where even transit operators are saying, I don't feel safe in my job. We've had transit drivers assaulted on the job, some of them ending up in critical condition in hospital. At the point where we can't protect our own staff, we can't protect the public, the city council has failed. And that's the number one priority to address is public safety.
So, absolutely. I mean, there's a few key priorities for city councils. I mean, I'm afraid it seems to happen kind of everywhere. It's just the nature of politicians, but there's been a lot of overreach into areas that perhaps the city just doesn't really need to get into. You kind of pointed out with healthcare, for example, you want to work cooperatively, but it's not your turf. What are a couple of areas that the city could get out of so they could focus more on the things, the transit, the park maintenance, the things that we understand to be municipal priorities when we seem to often get sidetracked into some side trips, I guess you could say?
Well, I would say this. My campaign is very much focused on getting back to basics and focusing on core services first. One of the, again, you know, and I've talked about this a lot. I've been very critical of the city council and their failures, but not having a strategic plan over the last 4 years has been a failure, right? There's nothing to point back to. There's nothing to connect the dots with. Number one thing we need to do is get our council together and get a 4-year strategic plan together, which will talk about all of those things. So we talk about the core services that we're going to invest in, but just as importantly, we're going to talk about the things that we're going to get out of, the things that are no longer within our purview to be managing. And that's where, again, relationship with other orders of government matters, because when it comes to significant investment in affordable housing, let's say, these are provincial and federal matters, right? But the city has been significantly contributing into these matters because we've had a lack of partnership and a lack of funding opportunity. We've got to reestablish which lane is ours and which lane is the provincial and which lane is the federal government's responsibilities, and work together to solve some of these big problems that Calgarians face.
So, speaking as a citizen of Foothills County, just outside of the city of Calgary, a beef we've had with, you know, Rocky View has been dealing with that as well. It was regional municipal plans, things like that, where neighboring communities, we get a little nervous sometimes when it sounds like we've got city councils or mayors who might want to start controlling things in the regional areas. What sort of plan have you got, though, with, you know, Wheatland, Rocky View, all of those bordering communities with the city of Calgary?
Yeah, and all those bordering communities have different priorities, but our job is much like we've talked about in dealing with the province. It's to build partnership with those neighboring communities and be good partners to them, right? Largely in part, water supply is a huge issue for a lot of these communities. And so we'll work collaboratively with the surrounding communities to make sure that they have the essential services they need and that Calgary can provide, as always, reasonable opportunities for those partnerships.
Great. I'll throw just kind of another thing. So something that's unique this time around in this election, there's now been a municipal party system brought in. There's going to be a number of people running under a number of different banners. I believe you stayed independent on this. Possibly you might have a couple of party aligned or a few with different parties in the city council. With that new dynamic, how do you think it's going to impact the council going forward?
I think if we were a few years down the road, the party system would be a little bit differently. I think most Calgarians would understand what it means. I think the struggle right now is that you've seen a lot of these parties form that with the members themselves have conflicting ideologies. And so you're not really sure what the party stands for when you have people that vote in different directions within the party. I think from a funding standpoint, the parties offer more ability to raise more money. But just because you provide different opportunities, and I can say this, I've been raising money for the Prostate Cancer Center for the last 3.5 years. That's primarily my role as CEO there. I can tell you, just because you create new ways to raise money does not mean that the funding capacity and market is different. And so I really don't see much change in terms of fundraising that the party system is going to offer. I do think that going forward, we'll see if Calgarians and frankly Edmontonians want to say yes to this, then you could see some real structure for them. But I think right now it's very confusing. This is a highly contested race, and people are saying, look, I want to pick the individual that I want. I don't want to have to be bound by everybody else's BS that they're associated to on some sort of municipal party.
Great. Well, I appreciate the clarities and answers. I know you're on the run there. I see you're in the vehicle,
Yeah,
and
I'm in what I call the mobile campaign office. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the great thing with digital communications and means, though. We can, we don't have to drag you into a studio for these sorts of things anymore. So, before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to let our viewers know? And where can people get in touch with your campaign if they have more questions or want to get in support of it?
Well, thank you for that. I think, Jeff Davison YYC is our website. Please go and sign up. I think this is a very important election for Calgarians. If we believe in getting back to core services and focusing on public safety and infrastructure and affordability, this is your campaign, right? And having some experience of being on the inside and now the outside and how we should look at it. I think, the number one thing I've learned in my time outside of City Hall is working with a charity. You don't have funding to do everything. And so you have to really stick to that strategic plan. And that's how we're going to treat tax dollars, is we're going to do better. We're going to freeze the growing tax rates that we've seen. And we're just going to say no more increases. You will see a 0% budget increase over the next 4 years while we restructure and set Calgary up for success over the long term.
Great. Well, thank you very much for talking to us today. I hope we get the chance to talk again sometime later on in the campaign as things develop. I'm certain there'll be new issues to chew into at that point, too.
I would love to, and thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you. So again, guys, yes, that's Jeff Davison. You can find more information at Jeff Davison YYC. And it is going to be, I like to, I'm a political guy. Every election's important. This one's going to be a big one as well. I think things are very divided. Things are in flux a lot. And I really want people to pay attention through this one. So we'll be covering it, as much as we can in this. It's hard when we got so many races going on in so many areas, but that's a good start to kick things off. Okay, let me get back to, one of the comments, and I appreciate it. Ammo C9M saying, my job is to make sure it doesn't get to a yes, a quote from Premier Smith. Yes, but don't interpret that statement from Smith as saying my job is to get out there and be on the no campaign. What she's saying is, which those of us committed to independence understand is probably an act of futility, but she believes, she feels her mandate is to make sure that the relationship with Ottawa can be changed to the point where people just won't choose to go. That is a bit different than being against independence. Look, if she really was opposed to it, if she really was the controlled demolition from the feds, she just wouldn't give us referendum legislation. It's in her hands. She could stop it. We wouldn't be able to have it. But either way, we've got the democratic ability coming, and I'm looking forward to it. We've never had anything like that before. That's what's exciting. There's never been a referendum like this anywhere in Canada outside of Quebec, ever. This is history in the making, but we want to make sure it's a good history in the making. We want to make things better. Let's not forget, just because we give ourselves the ability to make change doesn't mean we'll make a smart one. I like to think we will. I like to think Alberta is one of the smartest out there. I mean, that's another thing from Ammo C9, the commenter saying Calgary skyline should be at a minimum on par with Dubai or better. The climate cult has prevented it. I mean, there's truth to it. We should be doing infinitely better than we are right now. We shouldn't be nearly so far in the hole. That was some of the discussions I had on X. People like pointing out, look at Alberta and the mismanagement. Norway's got this giant fund that they've been saving. It's almost $1 trillion or more. And Alberta's got this little heritage trust fund. Yes, but Norway didn't have a Quebec to support. Norway didn't have the lazy cousin laying on the couch sucking the money out of the bank account all the time. Norway could keep their own funds and set it aside in a fund like that. Alaska did that too. Now, it's not to say it'd be impossible for Alberta to have pissed away all that money. Who knows? Oil people are good at doing that. But if we weren't being drained the entire time, we might be able to set up a different fund off to the side. But we can barely keep up because we're too busy shoring up the parasite provinces to the east. And boy, they hate it when I call them that. But that's the definition it falls under, guys. You're sitting there sucking the energy out of a host mercilessly. And the end run, if the host doesn't remove the parasite kills the host. And I can only think of one way out. Dear Jeff, this is from a commenter, Jason Weeks. Please remind on the campaign that Gondek and 6 councilmen stole $9,000 out of taxpayers for a home security system. Being in public office is a privilege, not to steal from the public. Okay. Steal, I don't know if is strong enough word, but I would call it perhaps an abuse of the funds, that are there. There's only so many things that should be covered or not covered. I'm kind of mixed when it comes to a little bit of that, right? I mean, I understand why a prime minister, whether I like the prime minister or doesn't fly coach. I understand why the mayor won't ride the train, though the mayor should be responsible for getting the train safe for everybody. People in those positions deal with a different level of personal threats that the average person shouldn't. It's unfortunate. We should be getting rid of people electorally, not through intimidation or threats, and having people show up at your doorstep and protesting outside of it, which has been happening, which I personally still feels crosses the line. I don't think it's appropriate. So if you don't want them dipping in and taking money to shore up their home security systems, we should stop tracking them to their homes. We've got a city hall where you can get on the case of politicians or use other communication. So I'm kind of mixed on that one. There's a lot of areas where they abuse our money. Absolutely. Loads of it. And they line their pockets way too much. Joe Maglioka, with his expensing, that was brilliant. And he's been charged for it even and convicted. But I mean, when it comes to security, there's different things. I mean, I don't disclose all of the emails and messages and some of the stuff I get after some of the shows or columns I've written, and if I've inflamed people or said something on X, and I get some pretty distressing communications come my way occasionally. And that's why my home has security. Now, I don't, I'm not getting tax funded for my home security by any means or anything like that. I'm more of an Albertan. We've got security, and of course I've got my legal property to be able to defend my household and a number of dogs and all sorts of things. But I don't begrudge some extra security things for people in public profile who've chosen those offices, whether it's a premier, prime minister, or a mayor. You don't want them abusing it, but there's a bit of a degree of why it should be covered. They shouldn't have to endure fear for their safety. But, well, that's part of things. Let's see what else we got. This is an interesting one from Cyril Arnold, numbers saying that over 40% of Canadian millionaires are thinking of leaving Canada. Pair that with 40% of 18 to 35-year-olds thinking the same. We're going to lose our producers. Great reason for independence. And, it's hard to tell, but brain drain was a big discussion in the 90s too, which when you are most productive, you're most ambitious, you're most trained, are leaving for other jurisdictions. I mean, of course, it's the worst that can happen. On my own YouTube channel, I've done little videos. I did one, it must be 10 years ago now, in Steubenville, Ohio. And I really, it was an eye-opener working through the Rust Belt when I did a lot of work in the States, in the Eastern States for a while surveying. And I was in the South too. And Steubenville it peaked at like 100 and some thousand people in population there when it had steel foundries and manufacturers. And you drive up, and I showed a bit of it in the video. It's almost like something out of a movie, a zombie movie, like it's overrun with vines and growth, these shut down refineries. And then you get to the downtown, and there's these beautiful Art Deco office buildings that are, 20, 30 floors even, and they're empty. The downtown is empty. Things are boarded up. And there's a donut around the downtown of just dilapidated and broken down homes. I think the population is down to 30 or 40,000 now. This town is falling apart. But what was really distressing was I needed laborers when I was out there. I needed to hire some guys for just some basic labor. Pretty good money for it. We call it stick pickers. They were going to walk behind the guys cutting the brush for our sight lines for surveying. And they just had to throw the brush off to the side, drink lots of water, moderately hard work. We're going to pay them $150 a day plus, this was some years ago, plus $20 a day pocket money because they call it hot shot just for your expenses out there. And they weren't even staying in hotels. They'd come from home. Not huge money, but you got to remember in that town, you could buy a house for $20,000 back then. So if you're making $150 a day, you could be doing pretty good. I couldn't find anybody there. I couldn't. I went downtown. I went to their employment office. I got a guy to put an ad up, and have all these people apply. And I set aside 2 days where I sat in my hotel room to see the applicants. I've talked about this in the show before. And the reason I wanted to see them, all I wanted to see is that they're reasonably decent shape. I wanted to see their teeth and their arms. And some people got upset when I said that online. Oh, you can't be so discriminatory. Look, I don't want junkies. And that's a hard thing to avoid in that part of the world. I imagine it's only gotten worse since. It was bad 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I want to make sure there's not tracks from the needles, and I want to make sure they don't have meth mouth, because I just don't have time for that on my crew. All these appointments were set to meet me at the hotel room. All these guys had emailed back and said, yeah, I'll have an interview. I'll have an interview. And then I sat for 2 days and not a single one showed up. I talked to the counselor at the employment center. He said, yeah, I thought that might happen. The bottom line is they're all welfare recipients. They have to show that they're trying to find jobs, but they don't really actually want to get one. This is a broken community. And the reason it's broken, like I'm getting long and circular, but back to what the commenter was talking about, is because when you've lost all your ambitious, you've lost all your hard workers, you've lost the professionals, well, what do you think gets left behind? So Steubenville crashed in the 80s. And it's not to say every person in Steubenville is broken, but most of them are. The ones who wanted more went to Pittsburgh or Columbus or Cleveland or one of the major centers within a short drive of there. The ones left behind were the disturbed, the addicted, the lazy. And it's a rut that you can't really dig yourself out of. Even when an employment opportunity shows up in town, as I brought to that town, the people weren't even willing to work any longer. The social change required to dig them out of that hole now, I don't know what it's going to take. And that town is just one among dozens and dozens and dozens in the Rust Belt. And when you look at, there's actually some old big mansions there. It was a really good place to be. Dean Martin was born there. But it fell apart. So it reminds you can be very wealthy and it can change quickly. So out here where we've got an energy economy, but if we keep losing our professionals, losing our ambitious, and people say the oil companies will never leave. They do. They have. They've done it before. We saw it when Ed Stelmach got greedy and tried to gouge more money out of the energy sector. The drilling rigs went south and the engineers and the professionals. A lot of my former coworkers from the oil field are all in Texas and Houston now. I envy them so in winter. The brain drain is real. And that trend becomes self-fulfilling. It becomes worse. It's a snowball going downhill. And then you get worse and worse as a jurisdiction. So that's something we've got to be fearful of. With Canada's unfriendly investment climate, with its high taxes, high regulations, dysfunction in general, corruption on the federal part, if we're starting to lose our best and brightest guys, we could be going into a downward cycle that we might not get out of for generations, if ever. And, I'm here to be a total bummer, but I'm saying we've got a really bleak outlook if we don't change things radically. And that's part of why I support the independence movement. I'm going to do a video on my own channel with that. I'm not trying to plug that so much, but I'm putting, step-by-step things. Because one of the things that's the truth, I think a province breaking out of Canada would be the best thing for all of Canada, not just that province. This country needs a shaking, a ripping to rebuild and change the system because it's on a bad trajectory right now. So we'll see what happens, but we keep at it, we keep active, and we take part. So thank you guys for commenting today, for viewing. I appreciate it. This is the last Friday, as I said, but I'll still be around on Wednesdays, and we've got the pipeline, and we've got specials. We're going to be set up on the floor of the Global Energy Show in Calgary in a little bit. And I'm bouncing all over at a lot of speaking engagements. I'm going to be in Red Deer for a big one on independence on the 14th, I believe it is. And I'm going to be in Regina on Monday. It's going to be a busy, busy year, getting a lot done. So thank all you guys for tuning in, and I thank you for your questions and comments. I'll see you on the next show. And again, take out a subscription, guys. We really appreciate it. Thanks.